Rugby World Cup 2023 Pool B. Tonga up against Ireland. First game of the tournament for the Tongan guys. Second one for the Irish. We're going to go through some squads, stats, history, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one's going to go. Andy Farrell, man. I still love watching that guy's press conferences. He just speaks a lot of sense, doesn't he? He's picked a very strong squad for this one, and he basically just talked about respecting the opposition, respecting the competition. And I guess we've seen in another game just recently what can happen if you make wholesale changes. There are other teams playing this weekend who also played a week ago who have decided to kind of change things up. So we'll have to see if there's a theme between consistency and, chopping and changing, which guys are going to stay fresh, which guys are going to get maybe tired, but then the balance is a bit of loss of cohesion. But yeah, Ireland have picked a pretty strong side. They're number one side in the world, and they want to go out and get some points against Tonga. They have played Tonga twice in their history, but not recently. In 2003, apparently Ireland toured, they played one game in Tonga, which seems like kind of ancient history. I can't imagine that kind of game happening now, but 40 points to 19 was the score back then. And then way back at the 1987 Rugby World Cup, it was 39-9 in Brisbane, also to Ireland. So it's a 2-zip lead for the Irish in those terms. But yeah, a lot's happened since 87 or 2003, really. This Irish side is kind of at an all-time high, and the Tongans are bolstered by a bunch of guys who've switched from All Blacks or potentially Wallabies over to Tongan allegiance. But to be honest, their recent performances in the Pacific Nations Cup maybe didn't live up to the billing. They lost against Japan, they lost against Fiji, they lost against Samoa. They did beat the Canadians in a couple of games, just in terms of their Rugby World Cup warm-up games. But yeah, of those four teams from the Pacific Nations Cup, Tonga are the one that kind of hasn't met their potential just yet. Maybe this is the game to get it done. For Ireland, though, Porter, Kelleher, and Furlong, that's the front row. Kelleher is the only change. He's up from the bench to start, so he swaps with Rob Herring. You can look for Ronan Kelleher trying to get himself into some space, potentially, because he loves doing that. But the battle at scrum time is going to be a fascinating one because there's some big players on both sides. Tyke Burns switches to his potentially more familiar second row spot, although he did pretty well at number 6 last week for Ireland. And then James Ryan also continues on in the second row. Peter Romani switches from 6 to 7. He was the top tackler for Ireland last week in a game where they spent a lot of time on attack, to be honest, but it's still good for him. To put, he got man of the match, so top tackle is a good reason to get that. Van der Fleer is up from the bench, and then Caelan Doris is there at number 8. So that's a pretty good forward pack. None of those guys in that forward pack didn't play in the game against Romania. Connor Murray starts ahead of Gibson Park. They didn't mention Gibson Park being injured or anything, so it seems to just be a switch, unless they just didn't mention it. Sexton continues on at 10, and he's captain. They asked him in the press conference about being wrapped up in cotton wool, and he's just like, nope, I want to play. Bundy, Ahki, Gary Ringrose, 12 and 13. Boy, were they good against Romania. This is going to be a different beast against Tonga. But Ahki had 190 metres and Ringrose had 142 against Romania. So they were just absolutely all over the place. James Lowe, Mac Hansen, your wings. And Andy Farrell seems to have taken a little bit of exception at all the talk about Mac Hansen potentially being a naughty boy and not getting selected last week. Yeah, he called out one of the journalists for maybe stirring up a bit of a storm in a teacup. But yeah, Hansen is named. And Hugo Keenan, who had 176 metres of his own, is there at fullback. Rob Herring, Dave Coyne, Finlay Beelum. Front row replacement, so a bit of game time for Coyne and Beelum. Henderson's still there on the bench, as is Ryan Baird. Craig Casey, Ross Byrne, and Robbie Henshaw. 3 back replacements, so kind of standard 5-3 for the Irish guys. For Tonga, I mentioned, they've got a few kind of big name guys who maybe haven't quite lit the scene up just for Tonga, but you can feel like they're not that far away. Fisi'ihoi, Ngauamo, and Tameifuna, that's your front row. Big Ben is captain, and he's 150 plus kilos, so we'll see how his battle goes up against Andrew Porter. How long Tameifuna can play for will also be an interesting one, but he tends to be able to go through 50-odd minutes, so we'll see if he's able to keep that up at a World Cup. Lousi and Fifita, very good athletic second row. They'll be looking to kind of pinch some lineup ball. Halaifonua, Talitui, and Fifita. That's Vaea Fifita. That's your back row. So Vaea Fifita, speaking about athletic, goodness gracious me. You better look out for him at number 8. His battle up against Kalen Doris is going to be a pretty fascinating one. And Talitui has been an absolute workhorse for the Crusaders in recent times, so he's got a bit of a history of winning. Augustine, Pulu, and William Havili, that's your 9-10 combo. So Pulu, he jumps ahead of Takalua, who is the usual number 9 for Tonga in recent years. Havili is kind of steady as she goes at 10. Ahki and Fekitoa, 12 and 13. That's a pretty big name midfield. Yeah, those guys have both got pretty big reputations. I mean, Fekitoa will be pretty familiar to Irish fans from his time with the All Blacks and also with Munster more recently. Kata and Taumoepeau on the wings, and then Charles Piutau there at fullback. Piutau's battle up against Keenan is going to be a pretty fascinating one as well. Another guy who'll be very familiar to Irish rugby fans. Moli, Koloamatangi, and Apikotoa, those are your front replacements. Paia, Funaki, and Vailanu, your forward replacements, and just the 2 backs in Takalua and Inisi. So potentially looking to go head-to-head with this Irish pack. But yeah, it's going to be a big old battle between these sides. Wayne Barnes is the ref for this one. It's a late kickoff, so 9 p.m. over there in France, which is kind of perfect timing for those of us here in NZ. That makes it 7 o'clock in the morning, so a good one to get up and have some breakfast with. Watch some rugby. I look forward to this one. I'll probably get up and watch this one live because of the time zone kind of falling in my favor. But yeah, predictions-wise, despite the big names, it is predicted to be very one-sided. Ireland by 35, according to the bookies, and by 47, according to the Rugby Forecast algorithm. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts on this one. How do you reckon it's going to go? Ireland at Tonga, 3rd match on the books for them. You guys let us know your thoughts. So to get some.